Today, a little bit different because I am sharing a little bit more about my background. I have talked a little bit about my professional life, my personal life, how I came to do what I do as a financial therapist at Mind Money Balance. And I wanted to be transparent and just share with y'all what's been going on behind the scenes and what you can expect to see a little bit more of. In 2023, something that I did for my business, I set business goals every single year. One of the big goals for me in my business was to just get comfy being back on YouTube. A big part of that is that social media, as we know, is very flash in a pan. It's also I don't have a love-hate relationship with it, but I have a love-dislike relationship with it. And what I know is that search engine optimization, aka SEO, aka all the words that are on my blog, that was a consistent, steady way that people learned about me, Lindsay Bryan-Podvin, and Mind Money Balance. And the great thing about YouTube is that these videos have a longer shelf life than something like Instagram. Let me be really clear about what that means when I'm talking about a shelf life. According to Scott Graphius, I think that's how you say his name, in 2022, he looked at how long a piece of content will live on a particular platform. That means if I open up that app, how likely is it that I will see your piece of content on that app? And what he found in 2022, so this might have changed a little bit, but even really, I don't imagine it's changed that much. Things on TikTok last 0 minutes. Unless a post goes viral, then you have between 30 and 90 days where that particular piece of content would show up. Twitter, 24 minutes. Facebook, 50 minutes, 50, so just shy of an hour. Instagram, 19 hours or just shy of a day. LinkedIn, 24 hours or 1 day. YouTube, 6 days. Now we're having some breathing room, right? Pinterest, 4 months, and a blog post, 2 years. So as a person who has built a business and really believes in sustainability, I believe in a little bit of both. I believe in testing things out and experimenting, as I talk all the time about, and testing and experimenting different things with your money. But I also believe in stop throwing spaghetti at the wall and use a little bit of data to make data-informed decisions. So I committed to 1 year of posting a video almost every single week on YouTube and using that as another way to have folks learn a little bit more about financial therapy, about money anxiety, about the emotional side of money, about how systems impact our relationship with money, as a way that felt a little less like being a hamster on a wheel, okay? What I also found in 2023 was that as I was retesting and trying out this experiment on YouTube, I defaulted to old behaviors that looked like outsourcing my self-trust or experiencing a lot of anxiety, specifically around doing it right, which, hello, don't we all feel like that when it comes to money? We want to do it right. I was spending time researching what is a title that will have a good click score? What type of thumbnail are people more likely to resonate with? And not talking about myself and just getting right into the meat of whatever that topic was that particular day. But as a person who likes data, when I looked at my data, my emails were almost always the thing that were the most engaging. And when I say most engaging, I mean people like to open them, they like to read them, they like to click on the links that I put in my emails. And in those emails, I get replies quite often because I'm much more transparent about who I am. I'm not just saying here's a tactic you can try with your money. Watch. I'm saying yo, I had a funky week. Do you want to hear about it? Or hey, here's a lesson that I had to learn again. I'm not trauma dumping over there, but I'm just a little bit, I don't want to say less polished because I don't believe in that, but I'm just a little bit more well-rounded as a human. And I realized that I want y'all to see that too. I want to share a little bit more about myself without falling into the fake authenticity that can sometimes happen on these platforms. And when I started kind of ranting a little bit more or being a little bit more transparent, I think it was on a YouTube live, I got some really good feedback from people who are in my world. Elaine Dizon said, "I love your useful tangent." sense. And so that was just very affirming. She is a coach who helps people clarify what actually matters to them so they can take next steps in their lives with an emphasis on work and career, but also in many other areas of life. So when she said that, I was like, okay, noted. The other thing that happened as I was like reflecting on all of this was that my friend Lilia Gowland, who is an amazing writer and also happens to be an amazing speaker on how to be safely authentic in the professional setting, she said, look, Linz, the more you are clear about who you are and the things that you believe in and the things that matter, the safer the space that you will create. AKA, if I model for people, here are some of my flaws, here are some of my lived experiences, the more likely it is that people will feel also like they are allowed to have different lived experiences and have flaws. And for me, being in this space of being a financial therapist, being a clinical social worker, and being a person who talks about money and emotions, I'm going to be transparent with y'all. One of my biggest anxieties about providing this type of information and education is that I come from financial privilege. I come from a financial background where we didn't have to worry in my family growing up about where meals were coming from, whether or not we were going to have clothes, whether or not we had access to the services that we needed. And not only did we have very much our bases covered, but we had more than enough. We went on vacations every year. My parents saved up for my siblings and I to go to college. And I graduated from grad school with no student loans, which is something that really contributed to the immense shame that I felt when I started working in the field of social work and got my first paycheck and was earning less than I did as a waitress. Not only was I like anxious about now being in a paycheck to paycheck situation, but I also felt like I completely squandered the financial privilege that I had. Here I am, a person who doesn't have credit card debt, who doesn't have student loans, and I'm in a position where I'm struggling financially. It felt so embarrassing, and it felt like I had all of these different layers of privilege, and I basically wasted them when so many other people would have been so happy to have had a little bit of their school paid for or to have like some of those financial safety nets that I had in place. And a popular thing in the world of personal finance is reiterating this rags to riches experience that we know doesn't exist. The American dream doesn't exist. This idea that if you just have meritocracy and you work hard, that you will be able to do all of these things in your life just simply isn't true. And so I'm hoping that by me normalizing, look, I come from this financial privilege, it helps you to see that even with all of those layers, there are still mistakes to be made. There are still lessons to be learned around our relationship with money. And money was a huge privilege that I had, and life still happens. And I want to say for folks who struggle with the word privilege, I just want to remind you that privilege doesn't mean you didn't struggle. Privilege just means that in this specific area, you did not experience outward prejudice or hardship because of that, right? I have an ACE score of 5. I am not interested in trauma Olympics. You can Google what an ACE score is. But I had so many protective factors because in our country, having money gives you access to a lot of the things that help to keep you safe. The American dream, the American myth, is not my story. And it's probably not yours either. Moving into the professional sphere, I heard so many times in my training and in my clinical work, oh, you're not here to make money. You didn't choose social work because you care about money. And also things like you should be grateful you have a job. So there were all of these mixed messages about you're not going to earn any money, and also like the jokes about it. And then also like you should be grateful that you have anything because other people have it worse. Like there was so much stuff wrapped up in the myth of like doing charitable work. There's actually a good podcast episode by Sounds Like a Cult about nonprofits that I think is definitely worth listening to. If you are, like me, a tender-hearted person and you care about the greater good of humanity, listen to it, because oftentimes in nonprofit work, we have kind of bought into this myth of individualism in a different way, meaning we think if I work 60 hours a week at this nonprofit earning barely a living wage, then somehow I will be able to make the change in the world. And not to say that those things aren't beneficial. To do meaningful work absolutely is beneficial, but we should not be putting all of the problems of the system on individuals. And if we're really going to go there in our country, in the United States, like the reason so many charities and nonprofits and community orgs exist is because the government isn't doing its job, right? We wouldn't need so many food banks, so many shelters, so many places to get our basic needs met if our basic needs were actually being met, right? This particular subset of organizations would not exist if capitalism wasn't so extractive. Anyway, so when I was in this space of living paycheck to paycheck, not only did I experience the emotional stress of what life was going to be like when I turned to get help from the talking heads. They were telling me like, Lindsay, this is your fault. You should have just bought a less expensive car. You should have just bought cheaper groceries. You should have stopped buying avocado toast. And I'm like, bro, I'm not buying avocado toast or expensive groceries or pricey car. Like I'm driving a used Honda. I'm shopping at Trader Joe's and Aldi's. Like I am not here like YOLOing, living my best life. And so much of that personal finance information was rooted in how it is solely your fault for ending up in a precarious financial situation. So I did learn about financial literacy, but I also learned that in the world of old school financial literacy, there's a lot of shame and a lot of blame, and it doesn't feel good. So personally, I was experiencing that. And then professionally, I specialized in working with people with anxiety and depression. And you know what a lot of people stress out about when they have anxiety and depression? Money. And my clinical training did not equip me to talk holistically with my clients about money. My clinical training as a social worker equipped me to say, if a person is struggling financially, you can advocate for them. You can help them find resources. So if somebody was stressed about money, I could say, here is a pamphlet for a place that can help you keep your lights on. Or here is a place that has a food bank on Tuesdays. But I could not say like, what else is going on? How are we ending up in this situation where you're struggling financially every single month? What's going on that is making it hard for you to say no to your child every time they want a toy? What is it that is making it hard for you to say no at work and taking on additional labor without additional compensation, right? Like that was not within my wheelhouse or within my training, but I so desperately wanted there to be a space for me to talk about money, emotions, mental health, and systems. And I didn't want to become a financial planner. I didn't want to become an accredited financial counselor. I wanted to stay in my lane. And for me, my professional lane was in the world of mental health, was in the world of social work. So I continued to search for a place for me to find where this Venn diagram exists. I found several different ways to get certified to feel like I can ethically provide this type of work without doing things like moonlighting as a financial advisor or as an investment advisor, right? Like that's not what I'm doing. But I have certificates in financial social work. I'm a certified financial therapist through the Financial Therapy Association, and I am a certified facilitator from the Trauma of Money Method. I've talked extensively about those programs. You can watch that video here. But I finally felt like, okay, I've got a space where I can comfortably talk about the things that matter and incorporate money without moving outside of my professional bounds. Around 2018, I was working in a group practice. For those of you who don't know what a group therapy practice is, oftentimes they are structured in a way where the amount of money that you earn, you get to keep a percentage of it and they keep a percentage of it, which makes sense because they are paying for the things like the admin, the rent, all of the software that's needed. They're often doing the marketing that helps bring clients to you. So that's kind of the way that it works. But me being the numbers person, I was looking at I'm actually generating a good number of referrals because of my financial therapy designation. And I'm also doing teletherapy. About 30% of my caseload was remote. This is pre-pandemic. This was very atypical. And I ran the numbers and I was like, I love being a part of this group and a part of this cohort. I appreciate the professional knowledge and wisdom, and just having a colleague down the hall is so lovely, and financially it just doesn't make sense. So I moved into complete 100% online teletherapy practice as a financial therapist in April of 2020. We all know what happened. But what also happened then was that my practice filled up really quickly because I had a couple of advantages. I had the advantage of already being a practitioner who used teletherapy. So I was a little ahead of the curve and just being familiar with the software and the programs, what works, what doesn't, just from like a clinician perspective. And I was comfortable talking about my work as a financial therapist because it is such a unique niche. And back in 2017-18, when I was doing it, I was the only person in my state, my home state of Michigan, that was licensed to do it. By default, like my practice filled up pretty quickly. And because of that, I had my peers coming to me saying like, how did you create a website? How did you set your fees? How did you market yourself? And so I said like, I'll teach you. And I created a live cohorted model where I was teaching other private practice therapists everything that I learned about private practice with this unique lens, if I do say so myself, of being a person who has a lot of information and education around financial therapy. So I also incorporated things like your money story and money mindset and what it means to raise your rates and how us as mental health practitioners are told like you're not here to make money, all of that stuff. And I created a program. I ran that program 7 times. And around the 6th time that I ran it, I had this feeling like this isn't what I want to do. I went into the field of financial therapy because I am adamant that financial literacy alone is not enough to move the needle. Much like most of us know, we shouldn't be scrolling on our phones before bed, but most of us do it anyway. Telling people, here's how to budget, here's how to save, here's how to invest is helpful. But unless we get them on board with why it matters to them and how they can make their relationship with money and specifically moving towards their financial goals achievable, all the information in the world isn't going to change it. I could not get off of this soapbox of more people need to know about the intersection of money, mental health, psychology, and our systems. And as you can tell by this monologue here, I kind of fell into coaching other therapists, and that's not my passion. That said, I want to be clear that people who are mental health clinicians absolutely deserve to be financially compensated for their work, and we get little to no, actually I'm going to scratch that, it's not little to no, we get no training in our clinical programs about how to do things like market ourselves, set up a business, price our fees for services. And so I do have a handful of trainings specifically on how therapists can build and grow their business, but I personally don't want that to become my business legacy. Like, I'm happy to talk about that. I talked about it for 7 cohorts. And so going back to on the 6th cohort, I realized I didn't want to do it anymore. I had a really lengthy wait list for that program. I felt like I could run it again while being in integrity with myself and while being truthful to people that look, this is the last time I'm going to run it. I don't think I'm going to run it again. This is not a marketing gimmick. If you've been wanting to work with me inside this program, now is the time. And to be able to end a program in integrity and on a high note felt so incredibly good. And it also meant that particular cohort was so excited to be there because so many of them had been watching my work for a while, thinking about working with me for a while, and they were all highly motivated and we shared so many values. So it was such a gift to run that program once more in integrity. And as I shared, I pulled some of those lessons that I taught in that group coaching program and have them as standalone mini courses. So if you are a therapist and you're curious about those things, I do have those things available to you, but I don't have that group program any longer. But if you want some information on marketing and pricing and what you need to be focusing on in your business, I do have those offers. But if you're a therapist who's been following me around how to build your private practice and you're like, what the happened to Lindsay? This is what happened. To try and bring it full circle, but I'm on a tear today, so it might take a minute. I shared at the start that I was experiencing a lot of anxiety of wanting to do it right. And as I expanded away from serving private practice therapists and into a more general, broad audience, it meant repositioning myself and my expertise and what I bring to the table in a new way. And it felt uncomfortable, to be quite frank with you. I used to be super comfortable reaching out, cold pitching, which is basically saying like, hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. Do you think we could work together? And when it came to doing that in 2023, it was a perpetual item on my to-do list that I didn't do. And so that's something that I'm unpacking and I'm working on my own. And I had an amazing opportunity come in 2023 that feels like the most aligned. I was approached by a center on a university campus about creating financial empowerment curriculum, not to replace financial literacy, not instead of financial literacy, but to really enrich the existing curriculum and help people learn skills, understand their relationship with money so that the existing resources and education that's there can actually be used and implemented. And with this partnership, it's a 5-part workshop series. I'll link information down below. And over the course of these 5 2-hour-long in-person interactive workshops, we're talking about what is a money story? How do the systems that we live in impact why we do what we do with money? How do our money worries show up and prevent us from making wise financial decisions? What does our nervous system have to do with how we spend? Why is it that traditional budgeting usually falls flat? And how can we set and maintain financial boundaries with our friends and loved ones? And let me tell you, that experience has been so profound because it is the exact alignment of the work that I'm passionate about in a method where I am interacting with people and where it is a win-win. I'm being compensated for my work and the participants who are attending aren't paying because there is somebody else that is covering the cost through things like grants. So it is so incredible. And because of that effort, I now feel far more confident saying, I provide speaking and education and training to help companies and organizations enhance and enrich their existing financial literacy content. So if you are a part of a school, if you are a part of an organization, if you are a part of a nonprofit and you are like, look, we've got all this professional development around money, or you work in human resources and you are like, what do we do with all this feedback that says we want information on financial wellness? Hi, it's me. I am the person that you can bring in for a one-time workshop to help your employees, to help your colleagues, to help your students understand why money is so much more than dollars and cents. It's emotional, it's psychological, it has to do with the systems that we live in, and also I can provide this information and education in a way that is rooted in a lens that takes into consideration all of the different dynamics that we have as people. So if that sounds good, you can go to mindmoneybalance.com/speaking. I will also put it in the description box, but that feels really good and that feels really exciting to me. And I'm really proud of the work that I'm creating and that I've created. And I also am just really honest with myself. I don't want to create an agency. That doesn't interest me. I don't want to keep running groups that are no longer feeling expansive. I'm allowed to change. I'm allowed to pivot. I'm allowed to expand and grow. And I hope this behind the scenes helped you learn a little bit more about me, about some of my anxieties, about what's coming up, and about where I'm going. And I cannot thank you enough for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it. And I hope to see you in the next video.